Everyone. In this session, we're going to discuss about Playwright, and this is the first session on Playwright. And I'm going to create a series of videos on Playwright with Java. So in this session, we're going to discuss about what is Playwright and how to write our first script using Playwright. So Playwright is offering a lot more features compared to Selenium. So I'm from Selenium background actually. So I'm going to compare Playwright with Selenium at each and every step as much as possible. Now in this video, let's look into how to configure Playwright, how to start with a Playwright. What is a Playwright? And there's something called as a browser. There's something called as a browser context, and there is something called as page, and how to do a login scenario. Let's look into a login scenario, simple login scenario using OrangeHRM page. Okay, let's get started first. So I have already created a Maven project here. Here is my Maven project, and this is my pom.xml file. Now, if you go back to our Playwright documentation, so Playwright documentation is very, very good documentation. You can find pretty much everything here. It's written very well. So here is our Playwright documentation. Now, if you go to the user section here in the user section, there is something called as pom.xml file. Click on it. Yes, and here is our pom.xml file. And here you can find the dependency of the Playwright with Java, or else you can navigate to Maven repository site, and you can search for Playwright. Yes, there are a lot of artifacts on Playwright: Playwright main library, Playwright driver, and Playwright assertion. So we're gonna take Playwright main library. So click on Playwright main library, right? And we have the latest version is 1.20.0. Let's click on it, and let's copy this dependency. And let's get back to our IntelliJ, and let's add it as a dependency here. Right. Let's reload our Maven project. So now it's going to resolve the dependencies. Meanwhile, let's add one more dependency called testng. So in this session, I'm going to explain, or throughout the Playwright sessions, I'm going to explain using testng. So testng is going to be our testing framework. So we have a 7.5 as our latest version on testng. But for time being, let's use 7.10 because it looks stable and a lot of people are using 7.10. Let's add testng here also as a dependency, and let's reload it. Yes, if you see now we have our Playwright and testng integrated with our project. Just click on Maven here, and then expand the folder. In the dependencies, you could see two packages. We could see two dependencies. One is from Playwright and one is from testng. Now we are good with the dependencies. Here under src and the test, let's create a first package. And I'm going to name it Playwright for now. So under Playwright, I'm going to create our Java class first test. So here is our class. Here is our class. So inside this class, let me create a main method quickly. Right. Now, if you get back to the Playwright docs, and if you get back to the first script, so this is the first script. Here in the first script, what's the first line? If you see the, so this is the main method. So under main method, this is the first line. What is the first line? The first line is Playwright is equal to Playwright.create. What is that? Let me explain. So we have a interface called Playwright. And I'm gonna apply a method on it called as create. Okay. Now, what does this line do actually? So this line is gonna trigger the Playwright engine. Okay. This line is gonna trigger Playwright engine. Now you can ask me. So we did not download any drivers, right? But in Selenium, the first line is gonna be pointing where is our driver location to our code. But here we are not pointing any driver location. We are not downloading any drivers, right? So here Playwright is gonna download all the drivers for us. So this line is gonna download the drivers for us. This line is responsible to start the Playwright engine, and Playwright engine will download all the drivers for us. So it's going to download Chromium, WebKit, and the Safari Firefox. Safari comes under WebKit. It's going to download Firefox for us, Mozilla Firefox. And now here, let's run this code once. Now let's see what's going to happen. If you see, yeah, my code started executing, but we couldn't find any logs here, because if you run for the first time, it's going to take some time. It's going to download all the drivers. We can see the logs here. We wait for some time, we can see all the logs on the console. Yes. Now if you can see, it is downloading. Because the Chromium got downloaded to this location. So this is my location inside my local, and here it is it downloads something called as FFmpeg, and here it is downloading something called as Firefox, and then next it will download WebKit as well. Yes, and then it downloaded the WebKit as well. Now, if you see here, my program is not getting terminated because we did start the engine, but we did not stop the engine. Okay. But for the time being, let me copy this path. So in this path, we have all our drivers. Copy and paste this path on the notepad. Okay. Now, unless we click on this red button, we click on the stop, we cannot stop this program because we did not write any stopping condition. Right now, engine is running position, so our engine is there, it's running there, and we did not write any code to stop it. So our program will not stop until we manually go and stop the program. Okay, and then I stop the program for now. Okay, now let's get into this folder. Let's check what's present inside this folder. Let's copy the path. Okay, so here is my, yes, so we are inside Playwright folder. So if you see inside Playwright folder, we have a number of folders here. We have Chromium folder, we have Firefox folder, and we have WebKit folder. So if we navigate inside the Chromium folder, we could see something called as Chromium Win expanded. And there are a lot of things here. So it automatically downloads all the files that are related to the browsers. Okay. It downloads all the files that are related to the browser. So it keeps all the latest drivers here inside this folder. So this folder usually it stays the same for all local systems, app data local, and then MS Playwright. So for the next time when you run the code, it's not going to download all these drivers again, but first it's going to check whether do you have latest drivers in this folder path, and then if there are no drivers here, it's gonna download all the things again. So for time being, let's keep all these voids in this. Let's keep all these drivers in this file, in this folder location. And after, let's stop the engine here. Playwright dot, there is something called as close. Now this line stops the engine, or it closes the Playwright. Now let's run the program again. Now it will not take a long time to run the code. Yes. Now it quickly got exited, and with code 0, it means successfully it exited the program. So it did not download. If you observe, it did not download the drivers again, because it already downloaded the drivers in our previous run, and all the drivers are present under Playwright folder. Okay. So this is the first line. The first line is going to be Playwright.create. So this line is responsible to download all the drivers. It is responsible to start the engine, starts the Playwright engine, and it downloads all the drivers. Okay. Now let's get to the second line. The second step, there's something called as, now let's say we want to create, or we want to open a Chrome browser. So we have something called as Chromium, Firefox, or WebKit. So if you want, yeah, there is one more important feature in Playwright, that now you can automate, or you can test your application on Safari browser. Though you have Windows, still you can test your application on Safari. We have something called as WebKit. But previously with Selenium, you cannot test your application on Safari browser in Windows. But here with Playwright, you can test. So let's look into WebKit then. Select WebKit here, and then dot. There is something called as launch. Okay. Now this line is responsible to create the respective browser. Now here we are creating a browser of WebKit. Okay. Now let us name it browser. Let's resolve the variable. If you see, it is returning playwright.webkit.launch. It is returning as a browser instance. Okay. Now let's run the code and let's see whether the browser is getting triggered or not. It's going to take a few seconds. Okay. Yes. Now, if you observe, it did not trigger any browser at all. My browser did not got open. Okay. So it is not invoking any browser, right? Because it's gonna just give us the browser. It's gonna give us the browser instance, or it's gonna just initially internally creates the browser, but it will not invoke the browser. Now, using browser, we have something called as browser context. So we can create a context here and name it new so there is a method called as new context. Yes. So what is new context? I'll explain. Now for time being, I'm gonna name the variable as context. Yes. Now let's run the code again and let's see whether the browser is getting invoked or not. No. So browser.newContext is also not invoking the browser. But what exactly is the browser.newContext? Let me explain on the whiteboard. So here the first step we did create, as a first step we did create something called as Playwright engine. So we did create something called as Playwright engine, or we did start the Playwright engine. Now using this Playwright engine, and then we created something called as browser. And from browser, you can think browser, here we have a browser. So here's our browser. So from browser, we can create n number of browser contexts. So what is a browser context? You can create a number of browser contexts. So browser context 1 and browser context 2, so on. So what is a browser context? Browser context is nothing but you can treat it like an incognito window. It is an incognito window. Okay, so you have a Chrome. You have Chrome here. Let's assume like you have Chrome, and out of this Chrome, you can create an incognito window. So each incognito window, the browser context is nothing but it's an instance of an incognito window. Here we have incognito window. Here also we have incognito window. So what is an incognito window? Incognito window will not store any data in that session. Okay, so each incognito window or they're isolated. So they're isolated windows. So this window will not store any data. So, or if you perform some actions on incognito window 1, and if you navigate incognito window 2, and if you see it's not the actions that are performed on incognito 1 will not be reflected on incognito window 2. So they're gonna be separate. They're isolated instances. So they are isolated instances. So this is very useful for us. So you can create a number of browser contexts, or you can create a number of incognito windows, and you can test number of applications at a time at the same time. So let's say you have some chat application. So you have some chat application where there is a sender, and he sends, and there is receiver, right? Who receives, and then again he'll send the messages, and the sender will receive now. So we need sender and then a receiver. Now you can open a chat window here. So this is your chat window 1, and you can create and you can open the same chat website or some chat window here inside this incognito window 2 as well. So see here chat, and here is also your chat. Now you can pass messages to someone. So here you can send, and from this chat window again you can send the response. So in such a way you can test chat type of applications as well using browser context. Okay, now from this browser context you can create something called as page. Not just one page, you can create a number of pages. So here you can create a number of pages. So out of this browser context as well, you can create a number of pages. Now, what is a page? Page is nothing but it's like a window or a tab. Now here we are creating a tab in this browser. You're opening some page, you're opening a new page, tab or a window. So here in Playwright, tab or a window is called as a page. Okay. Once you create a page, now using this page, you wanna navigate to respective URL. Now you're gonna navigate to some URL. Okay. So now this is gonna be a hierarchy. So first you wanna start the engine, and then you wanna create a browser instance. Now from this browser instance, you can create n number of browser context instances. So each context is nothing but an incognito window. Now out of this context, you can create n number of pages. And using this page, you wanna navigate to the page, you wanna navigate to some URL, and you can start your testing your application. Now let's get back to our code. So we did create a context here. Using this context, let's create a new page. For timing, it's gonna return. So context that new page is gonna return as a page type of object. Now let us run the code and let's see what's happening there. So nothing has happened right now. So by default, Playwright is going to execute all our test cases headless in headless mode. Okay. To run our test cases in a head mode so to launch our browser, here inside this launch, it can take an option called as launch option. So we can specify the launch options. So let's navigate into a launch method. What exactly is a launch method? So there are two type of launch methods here. Yes. So here, let us launch. So let me launch here. So if you see here, the launch, it is written as a browser type. Okay. It is written as the browser type. But here inside the launch, you can pass an option called as, or else just type launch. You can see there are two type of launches. The two type of launch overloaded launch methods. The first is launch, which is not going to take any parameters, and there is one more launch method which is going to take launch options, right? So you can pass launch options. So new launch option, yes. So I did create an object out of launch options class, and on this object we have a method called setChannel. Okay, now using setChannel, you can set the browser type, what browser type you want to invoke. Okay, so for now, let me remove the setChannel. We are worrying about set headless. There's something called as set headless. Right. So by default, it is asking us to set the headless mode. So we want headless as not true, but as a false. So we want the browser to be invoked. Now let's run the code. Okay, it did close, it did open, and it did close the browser very quickly. So here, before closing the Playwright, yeah, let us sleep for a while, and I'm going to use uninterruptibles. Here, let's sleep for 2 seconds or also for 3 seconds. Now let's run the code again. Now it's gonna invoke the browser. Yeah, if you see, it just invoked the browser. If you see, it's a Playwright type because internally it's gonna, for the WebKit, it's gonna show as a Playwright thing. Now instead of WebKit here, let's specify Chromium. Okay. Now when I run this code again, it should invoke Chromium browser. So if you notice, it is not going to download any driver here, because it did already download the drivers in our previous run. Yes. Now if you see, it did open a browser, right, in incognito mode. Okay, for time being, let me comment out this line called Playwright.close, and let's run the code again. Yes. If you notice, it is opening the browser in incognito mode. Okay. And then if you see here, our Chrome icon is in a blue color because it is not Chrome, it is Chromium type. Okay, so Opera, Chrome, and Edge, all these three browsers use the Chromium as a base. So if you want to test specifically on Chrome, yeah, we can do it. Okay. So by default, it's going to open in incognito mode. So each browser context is going to be an incognito mode. It's a specific incognito window. Okay, for time being, let's close this. And now inside this Chromium, let's open specifically Chrome browser. So on these launch options, we can specify the browser type as well. So we can chain all these methods here. Now we have something called a set channel. So here inside set channel, just specify Chrome. Now it should open the Chrome browser. Yes. If you notice here, if you notice now it just opened the Chrome browser in the incognito mode. Okay, so this is how Playwright works in high level. Okay, so finally let's close this. Let's uncomment our Playwright.close method. Right. So this is how we invoke a browser, and this is how we create a page. Okay, so this is gonna be a boilerplate code for each and every program, or for each and every time if you want to create a page, you have to write all these 4 lines, and then finally you have to close the Playwright instance. Okay, this is gonna be our boilerplate code. Okay, now let's navigate to, or else you can avoid writing this Playwright.close using try with resources. Just enclose your first statement inside try. Now we can remove this line. Okay. It's called as play with resources. I am enclosing this Playwright.create statement inside try. Now automatically it takes care of the close in the Playwright instance. I need not have to specify Playwright.close at the end of the program. Okay. Now we are at page level, right? Now after creating or after instantiating the browser window or browser page, now our next task is to navigate. So we have a method called navigate. Okay, so for each and every method, you could see 2 types of 2 overloaded methods. One directly takes the argument, and the second thing takes the argument as well as the options. Okay. Now for time being, let us navigate into orange HRM page. Let us copy the URL. You can paste it here. So if you want me to draw parallels between Playwright and Selenium, here page represents driver. Okay, here page represents the driver, and here navigate is nothing but driver.get, or page.navigate is nothing but driver.get in our Selenium. So inside get, we directly pass the URL. Here in the same like in Selenium, here in Playwright as well, we use navigate method and we pass the URL. Okay. And then, okay, here it's a very good feature in Playwright. We call it as, it is called as auto wait. Okay. So we need not have to specify after navigating to a page, we don't have to specify any waiting time here, because internally it's gonna wait. Internally it's gonna wait till the page loads. Okay, so let's go to the documentation. So we have very good documentation here inside the docs. There's something called as navigation. Let's go to navigation. So if you see here something called as auto wait. So navigate into a URL, auto waits for the page to fire load event. Okay, if the page does a client-side redirect before load, and then will auto wait for the redirected page to fire the load event. So it's gonna wait till the load event is fired on any respective page. Okay, so first, if you see here, first it's gonna trigger, or any page is gonna trigger on DOM content loaded event, and then it's gonna trigger load event, and then finally it's gonna wait till all the Ajax calls or the calls that happens in the backend. It waits till all, or till we call it as network calls. It waits till all the network calls. There are three modes in a high level: on dog content loaded, on load, and on network idle state. You can wait till the network is in idle state as well. So there are three options in a high level. So by default, it's gonna wait till page fires the load event. Okay. Or if you want me to generalize, or if you want to explain in simple terms, what is a load event? If the DOM content is loaded, and then usually when DOM is loaded, it loads all the images and it loads the HTML page. In the load event, it's gonna resolve all the JavaScripts, that are coming from the backend, and then it also it can and then there can a lot of Ajax calls can happen after load event as well. That is called as nothing but network calls or API calls that can happen. And if we wait till network is idle, then it resolves. It waits till all the network calls are resolved. Okay, so most of the time, load event is gonna give us a good structure or good base structure. So we need not have to specify any explicit waits here. So internally, navigate method, it's gonna navigate to the respective URL and it's gonna wait till the page fires the load event. So let's run the code and let's quickly check what's happening. Okay, so it did navigate to orange.hrm page. So next target is to identify the username field and identify the password field and then click on the login button. Okay, now here our page is nothing but a driver. Okay, so here inside Selenium, to find an element, we have a method called page driver.find element. But here we have a method called, instead of a find element, so we have something called as locator. A page.locator. Now inside locator, you can specify any locator strategy. Okay, you can specify any locator strategy inside locator. Now page.locator is gonna give us an object called as locator object. So for time being, let me name it as username. Or if you resolve it, yes. Now page.locator is gonna give us a locator object. What is locator object? If you draw parallel with Selenium, locator object is nothing but you can create as a by class. So locator class is nothing but a by class in Selenium. Okay, so page.locator is not going to find the element. It is just resolving the locator strategy here. So until and unless you perform actions on this locator, it's not going to find that locator on the web page. So here now, let's identify the username field on our page, inside our page. So I'm going to use selector sub here as my extension to find the locator. So this is our element inside the DOM for username, and here is our CSS selector related to CSS selector. Let's copy this and let's get back to the code and let's paste it here. Okay, now here you can specify CSS selector or XPath or ID. You can pass anything. It's gonna resolve them internally. Okay, if you start, or else if your locator is starting with double forward slash or a single forward slash, now automatically it can detect that the text that you have entered inside the locator method is going to be text path. But for now, we're going to specify the CSS selector type. Okay, so this is my username locator. Similarly, let's create a locator for password as well. And let's create a locator for password. Let's identify what exactly the password is. So we have an ID for that. Let's copy the CSS locator. Let's paste it here. And we create a locator for login button as well. Yeah, for login button also we have an ID and paste it here. Now we did identify username, password, and login. Let's enter username, password, and then finally click on login. Now we have locator, nothing but username dot. Now we have lot of methods on each locator or on each element. Okay, so we're gonna discuss about all these things one by or all these things in our later sessions. But for now, let me explain something called as fill. Your fill method is nothing but it is a synonym to send keys in Selenium. Okay. Now inside this fill, you can enter the text. So admin is our username. Something called as password. Inside password, let's enter admin123. Admin123 is our password. And finally, we want to click on login button. Dot, something called as click. Okay. That's it. Now let's enter some text here. Here as well, admin123. Let's click on login. Yes. Finally, it logged on. Yes, into this orange HRM page. So once we log into this page, let's check. Okay, let's verify for this dashboard title. Okay, let's identify the locator of this dashboard. And yes, we have something called as we have an SES selector for that. Let's copy. Now, how to assert it? So Playwright provides assertions as well. So we have something called assertThat. So we have assertThat in Playwright, and it comes from. Okay, let me statically import it. Microsoft, we have Playwright package. Under Playwright package, we have something called as assertions. Under assertion package, Playwright assertions, and I'm gonna import assertThat method. We have assertThat method, and if you see assertThat method, now I can type here assertThat. Yes. Now assertThat method, there are three overloaded methods. One assertThat takes page object, another assertThat method takes locator object, and there is one more assert method which is taking API response as well. So using Playwright, not only UI, you can perform API tests as well. So we're going to discuss about all these things in our later sessions. So for now, let's pass the locator. Okay. Or else directly, or else let's pass the locator. So we have the page object locator. So is our header CSS selector. This is CSS selector for our header. Now on this assertThat, we have a lot of methods. Okay. Now I'm gonna verify for hash text. So assertThat, it's gonna assert on this locator. Okay. Now on this locator, I'm gonna assert for text. Here I'm validating whether text is dashboard or not. So let's pass dashboard here. Yes, that's it. So internally assertThat also has weights. It also assertThat also has auto weights internally. So it's gonna wait if it is not, if there is no dashboard title inside homepage or inside whatever page it is, it's gonna wait for some time. So by default, it's gonna wait before asserting for that header. Now let's run this code. Yes, now let's run this code. So it should log in and then it should assert for the title. Yes, it's going to wait for 3 seconds, right? Yes, and finally it is closing the Playwright instance. So you can close the Playwright instance finally, or you can close the page alone. So to close the page alone, we have page object and dot. There is something method called as close again. Now page.close closes the page. So page.close is nothing but you can treat it like a driver.quit. So it's specific to driver.close. You can treat page.close as a driver.close. And we have context as well. You can close the context as well. Now you can treat context.close as driver.quit. Because in Selenium, driver.quit is going to close all the pages or all the tabs. All right. So here under a context, we can have n number of pages. So when once you close the context, it's going to close all the pages. But here you are specifying the page to what page you want to close it. Here you are specifying here you're applying the close method on a specific page. The page.close is nothing but it is synonym to driver.close in Selenium, and context.close is nothing but it's synonym to driver.quit in Selenium. And then finally, of course, we did wrap our Playwright statement inside try with resources, so it's going to automatically take care of closing the Playwright instance. So these are basic program, guys. How to navigate using Playwright and how to pass or how to fill data into input fields and how to click and how to these are basic assertions where we are asserting the page title or page header, I think. Yeah, so these are basic program, guys. Yeah, thank you for watching this video. Yeah, so we're going to discuss about lot more interesting things on our upcoming sessions, and slowly I'm going to explain all these things that are present under the docs. I'm going to show you what's present in the docs. I'm going to show you a lot of examples. Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you.